So when we opened our doors to this new building in 2023, the Lightburn Gallery was unveiled as a unique space for learning. We partner with organizations to extend their educational outreach through biannual exhibitions that in turn inspire complementary programming. The gallery acts as a hub, and think of the programs as spokes. Over a year ago, I ran into Arianne Kolb, the executive director of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, and its former ED, Wes Haynes, by the Library Cafe. Very quickly into our chat, I knew we'd found our next partner. At that time, I had no idea that the Merritt is one of 20th century America's most significant achievements in public architecture, planning, engineering, and landscape design. What I realized as I spoke with them that day is that I unconsciously exhale and relax every single time I speed toward that green sign that says, "Welcome to Connecticut," and the Merritt Parkway. And that this reaction is very much the intentional result of the visionaries who conceived it. Honoring the 25th anniversary of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy and America 250, this exhibition highlights the significance of Connecticut's landmark Masterwork, which led to its listing on the National Register for Historic Places and status as a National Scenic Byway. The show was co-curated by Arianne and artist and exhibition designer Tom Bernson, and I encourage you to spread the word and visit it over and over and over again. Now that show is the hub. Tonight, we're delighted to present the first spoke with Arianne discussing the history of the Merritt's complex design and the Conservancy's important role in preserving Connecticut's iconic landmark for the enjoyment of future generations. Please join me in welcoming Arianne Kolb.
Thank you, Mickey, for that wonderful introduction. I don't know if I need to say much more, but basically, thank you for hosting this exhibition, seeing that we could really partner on this. It has been an incredible experience. I'm grateful to the staff of the library, Victor, Julia, everyone who has been promoting this nonstop to the public. And big shout out to Tom Bernson, who sort of came in on a first meeting. We were just like, oh, can you hang this show? What would we do? He committed. We worked together tirelessly for months on this. He put so much passion into this, and the results are very clear. So thank you, Tom. We've worked on many projects before, but this one was very rewarding. Attila Kuhn, who did those wonderful drone video out there. Doug Zumba, who introduced me to Joseph Rossi, who owns that wonderful tool chest from an original worker on the Merritt. Cindy Mullins, Nate Gibbons, whose work has been so inspired by the Merritt and is on exhibit. Beth Burgess of the Museum of Connecticut History for lending the amazing Howard Heath watercolor. Westport Public Art Collections, and Kathy Benowitz for lending their Howard Heath. Joel Rosenkrantz in New York City for lending the wonderful Saul Bazerman Art Deco piece. Marilena Fernandez for just going and digging in archives with me. And last but not least, I'm so grateful to Wes Haynes for sharing his wealth of knowledge, my predecessor. And thank goodness he's still on the board and working with me. I constantly have questions for him, and I've learned so much and keep learning, and it's wonderful. So anyway, moving along. So every time, as Mickey said, same thing. Every time I cross the New York State line from New York, welcome to Connecticut, I really exhale, and I just feel like, okay, I can breathe again. I'm enjoying this. Many people comment on this. Mickey and I, when we talked, we shared this visceral experience. Why is that? Well, John Lennon, for example, John Lennon drove on the Merritt for inspiration for songs. Willem de Kooning painted it. John Russell, the influential New York Times art critic, wrote, "My happiness as a Connecticut native was and still is bound up with the Merritt's rise and fall." So what went into creating this iconic and breathtaking road, especially when the fall foliage is at its peak and right now when the spring blooms are emerging? Many Connecticut residents and daily commuters don't realize the complexity of design and ingenuity that really went into creating the Merritt, nor the complexity that basically stewarding this incredible treasure. The unique bridges, together with the bucolic landscape, creates a kind of state park that provides equitable access to beauty to over 25 million travelers per year, about 70,000 per day. Because of this successful integration, as Mickey already said, of all these elements, the Merritt Parkway is one of America's most impressive achievements in 20th century architecture, engineering, and landscape design, and this is what earned it landmark status on the National Register of Historic Places and as a National Scenic Byway. The Parkway was primarily built to ease traffic congestion along the only route connecting all the towns was Route 1, the Boston Post Road. So already surveying for a new road began in the 1920s, followed by land acquisition in 1931. Beyond its transportation role, the Parkway played a vital part in providing employment during the Great Depression, when road construction was a key public works initiative. It also helped spur the growth and development of Fairfield County. Now, the state of Connecticut and the Department of Transportation could have easily constructed a straight superhighway with simply functional, unremarkable bridges and without concern for the natural environment. Yet they embraced two young, talented, creative minds, an architect and a landscape designer, who joined forces to create a masterwork with limited resources. So designed and built in the 1930s and completed in 1940, the Merritt Parkway was Connecticut's first divided lane, limited access highway and was hailed as the road of the future at the 1939 World's Fair in New York. The Parkway, actually I'm gonna stay here. The Parkway is 37.5 miles. Sometimes people are like not sure. Where does it begin, where does it end? 37.5 miles, starting in Greenwich, ending in Stratford. The landscape by one designer, Wealthayer Chase, the bridges by George Dunkelberger, 69 bridges, all in a range of styles. In 1935, the Parkway was named after Congressman Schuyler Merritt, a resident of Stamford, and a strong advocate for its construction. At the groundbreaking ceremony on May 23, 1934 in Greenwich, his words captured the Parkway's enduring vision and now serve as the Conservancy's mission. He said, "This great highway is not being constructed primarily for rapid transit, but for pleasant transit. This county is fortunate for having such beautiful backcountry, and it is our great duty to see that these beauties are preserved." Here you see the ribbon cutting in 1938 when the first portion of the Merritt was opened, starting in Greenwich or at the New York border, going up to Norwalk. And here you see on the left is Schuyler Merritt, and he's there with Governor Wilbur Cross, the first selectman of Greenwich, and the DOT commissioner at the time, McDonald. Merritt insisted that people enjoy this road without distraction and congestion caused by commercial trucks. I mean, people took it literally. They would really have picnics on the side of the road. So there was a precedent for this approach. The Parkway was built at a time when Robert Moses, Director of Public Works in New York and then State Commissioner of Parks, had been fulfilling his grandiose vision, highway and park scheme in New York. So he's known for the northern and southern state parkways in Long Island, connecting it to the Jones Beach, the Bronx River Parkway, and the Hutchinson River Parkway, and many bridges. He did a lot. He also, so the Hutchinson Parkway was started in 1924, completed in 1940, and mainly with these stone bridges, which were actually pretty expensive. He also, though, rehabilitated the Flushing Meadow ash dump into a park for the World Fair in 1939. And the theme was the world of tomorrow. And there was a strong focus on automotive and industrial design and innovation. A model of the Merritt was actually featured in one of the pavilions, as I mentioned, as the road of the future. Here you see the Chrysler Pavilion. A lot of the pavilions were in that predominantly Art Deco style. On the left, you see the Chrysler building itself, another prime example of Art Deco, completed in 1930. The Merritt was also, the result was partly inspired also by the City Beautiful movement and Frederick Law Olmsted. And here you see one of these wonderful bridges in Central Park with its winding roads, also unique individualistic bridges. So there was this whole movement at the time of a beautification of urban landscapes. Here's another bridge in Central Park. So what was the architect George Dunkelberger thinking when he designed 69 individualistic bridges on the Merritt? When designing the bridges, he stated that we believe that these bridges are pleasing to the eye, represent a radical departure from highway bridges, and are decidedly individualistic in character. And indeed, the bridges truly are unique in the history of road planning and are part of what makes the Merritt so special. It was the first road to eliminate on-grade crossing, and bridges were designed so low to conform to the height of the roads. This was never designed for trucks. So the bridges represent a range of styles. Yeah? Sorry? Yeah, I know. So the bridges represent a whole range of styles: French Renaissance, Gothic, rustic, Art Deco, Art Moderne, Neoclassicism. There's no overall scheme, no program. Each bridge is an independent work of art, and most of them are in concrete, unusual for a parkway, partly done as a cost-saving measure. But Dunkelberger rose to the challenge by tinting concrete, tinting concrete, numerous colors, carving into it, adding sculptures, and maximizing the dramatic possibilities of each of the bridge's locations. So construction of these bridges starts around 1934. The cost, completed around 1940, cost was $22.7 million. Land acquisition was about $6.9 million of that. Construction was $11 million. Landscaping, not too much, $1.6 million. And here in this slide, it's interesting because way in the background, I don't know if you guys can know what that is back there. Yeah, that's Waveney House. And a lot of that land belonged to the Lapham estate at the time. That was then given over to the Parkway. Most importantly was that this project employed over 2,000 workers during the Depression. And here I'm going to show you a whole bunch, just whiz through some slides showing the Parkway during construction. This is one of the watercolors in the exhibition by Howard Heath. He was hired by the WPA, Works Progress Administration, to document the construction of the Merritt. He did a series of, I think, about 20 watercolors, but have only been able to track down 2. This one is in the Museum of Connecticut History, and the other one is in the Westport Public Art Collection. So both of these are on view. He was also an early member of the Silvermine Guild. This is the Cross Highway Underpass in Westport, sort of Westport-Fairfield border. Also, we have this sculpture on view, an homage to the workers at the time. Saul Baserman did a series of these sculptures, and this was a asphalt paver. So there's definitely, we've heard that there was definitely a lot, these workers were quite proud of this project, the people who worked on this. Here's a picture of the surveyors. And the toolbox, I thought it was important to include the toolbox in the exhibition because this was a toolbox. His name is inscribed on it. His initials are on almost every tool. He was Swedish, Carl Nikander. and he cast the concrete designs on the bridges. And he includes an inscription on the box where he quotes a fellow Swede, the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time, Dag Hammarskjöld, and says, "How humble the tool when praised for what the hand has done." So in some cases, bridges, the bridge construction preceded the roadway clearing. And here's one example of the Sport Hill Road Bridge in Fairfield where this happened. So in 1941, everything's completed. Another WPA artist, Marion Post Walcott, a wonderful female photojournalist, photographer at the time, was also commissioned to document the completion. She did a whole series of beautiful photographs, all in the Library of Congress, and we have a whole series on view in the exhibition. In terms of the designs of this bridge, so as I said, whole range. You have here White Oak Shade Road, Art Deco. Here's a photograph of Riverbank Road Bridge. Here's more Renaissance style bridge, the Ponus Ridge one with the cartouche in the middle. This is more Gothic style, the New Canaan Overpass. In terms of the rustic bridges, as I mentioned, there were only 3 of them. These were expensive to produce. Oh shoot, this keeps hitting it. It's interesting, there's a story where the Rippewam Bridge in Stamford, the Mount Rushmore sculptor, Gutzon Borglum, he had his studio right near it, below it, by the river, and he demanded that stone had to be used since he could see it from his studio and wanted to maintain this rustic appearance. No concrete for him. So that was done. In terms of decoration, Lee Sumner, the lead engineer, reported in 1937 that the ornamentation cost only 1% of the total cost of bridge construction, which is pretty amazing considering how decorative and amazing they are. Kenneth Lynch, who created the gargoyles and fittings on the Chrysler Building in 1930 and the Atlas rings on the Rockefeller Building, he produced all the metalwork on the bridges. And this is one of the most beautiful examples of the Lake Avenue Bridge in Greenwich with its arches covered in cast iron vines. Recent restoration in 2020 brought this back to life. Here are some details. Then there's Merwin's Lane Bridge, which he also worked on in Fairfield. This is an extremely whimsical bridge with the spider web, spiders in it, butterflies. It is just a charming bridge. The sculptor Edward Ferrari also embellished a number of bridges. Here I show you Edward Ferrari and the studio where one of the pylons was being worked on and cast. He decorated many bridges. Comstock Hill Road Bridge in Norwalk is just one of the most beautiful works with the Native American and the colonist celebrating the colonial history of Connecticut. For this one, though, in this case, the Native American was sculpted by his father because he was in a big hurry to get on his new fishing boat, wanted to take his son, and said, okay, fine, and he was quite a notable sculptor himself, and so he helped him, he chipped in on this one. Other than that, Ferrari did it on his own, but this was kind of a rush job, but turned out beautifully. Here are this is the Burr Street Road Bridge. These are not easy to see, unfortunately. I'd like to have these be a little more visible. They're covered in vines often, but they are, again, celebrating the construction workers of the Merritt, the surveyors of the Merritt, and going back to Ferrari's studio, these photographs show the clay molds in which the concrete was cast for this bridge. Here's another example of Ferrari's work. This is the Owl and the Hillside Road Bridge in Fairfield. For these griffins on High Ridge Road Bridge in Stanford, he employed this graffito technique, layering different colored coats of concrete and then scratching and scoring the top layer to get to the next, to expose the base coat underneath and producing this beautiful effect. It's also seen on a few other bridges. Then, of course, we have the wonderful James Farm Road Bridge in Stratford. The end pylons feature a shield with the initial CHD, celebrating the Connecticut Highway Department. The central wings are these Nike wings. She was the Greek goddess of victory, but also symbolic of speed, motion, and triumph. And I love this painting in the show by Cindy Mullins on the hubcap, inspired by the James Farm Road Bridge. It's wonderful. Ferrari, what he did, in order to give the wings this shimmering textural quality and wonderful effect, he added white quartz to the concrete to create a striking effect. It's interesting because here, in Nate Gibbons's beautiful photo on view in the show, this is the River Road in Stratford. He actually integrated crushed green glass from bottles and mixed that in. So, they were really creative, resourceful, and clever in the way they worked with this medium. So the Parkway was truly a collaborative effort between Dunkelberger and the landscape designer Walter Chase. Chase said, "My aim was to heal the landscape so Dame Nature could pull it together in time." Chase was inspired by the English landscape designers as well as Frederick Law Olmsted. And he spent a lot of time traveling throughout England, comes back in 1934, joins the Highway Department's Bureau of Roadside Development, and in 1935, at the age of 27, he becomes the chief landscape architect of the Merritt Parkway project. Here's a drawing of Round Hill Road Bridge, and sort of shows, the thoughtfulness, the integration of landscape and plants with the bridges, that this was always something that they were working on. In terms of the excavation, there was a real respect for the landscape and the wetlands. Of course, with all the rocks in this area, you had to cut through many of those, but still, Chase basically was very sensitive to this, and that's why it has this beautiful winding effect. So from 1935 to 1942, Chase planned and supervised the planting of 22,000 trees and 40,000 shrubs, and most of them protecting as many native species as possible. So during excavation, when they were building the road, he would take those plants or trees, put them aside, and then replant them. He didn't just get rid of them. He contracted for almost 50,000 laurels, though. Thousands of dogwoods, pines, cedars, hemlocks. Apparently, Eleanor Roosevelt drove the Merritt every year to see the mountain laurels and dogwoods in bloom. The Merritt Parkway also has a history of civic engagement from the moment it opened. And Fairfield County garden clubs and civic clubs were in the forefront, raising funds to donate several thousand laurels and dogwoods. And at least at the time, there was a time, some were still around, but about 17 plaques on erratic boulders like this one were placed on the right-of-way to recognize their contributions. So when asked upon completion of this parkway what he had done, Chase welcomed the question as the greatest compliment. The goal had been for the landscape to appear untouched. And this is the mission of the Conservancy, to produce this naturalistic environment and pleasant driving experience. So how many of you before today knew about the Conservancy? Okay, that's not bad. I've talked to people where there's hardly anybody, but that's good. So the Conservancy's work involves balancing the functionality of this major thoroughfare and its ongoing preservation. So for 25 years, we've been working in partnership with Connecticut DOT as advocates and stewards on numerous projects: bridge and service, area restoration, landscape and vegetation management, and the Route 7 interchange, as well as off-corridor developments that threaten the viewshed. While I don't have time to go, I could talk for hours about this. Wes could about all the projects that we've been involved in. I'm just going to touch upon a few things. So recently, with our involvement, DOT completed a 9-phase corridor improvement rehabilitation that began in the 1990s. And this project comprehensively widened the travel breakdown lanes by 16 feet, upgraded subsurface drainage. We replaced the 1950s metal guide rails with these wooden rustic guide rails. lengthened select entrance and exit ramps, removed invasive vegetation, refreshed trees, turf, and obviously restored many of the bridges. The service stations were going to, at one point, be almost torn down. They are part of the original design by Dunkelberger, and thanks to the architects and board members David Parker and Herbert Newman, they beautifully restored them between 2009 and completed in 2012. So I'm going to highlight a few of our bridge restorations. So these bridges are intrinsic to, to the, aesthetic design of the parkway. So over the years, we've worked closely with DOT on restoring the architectural features of these overpasses and underpasses, which have been compromised due to age, insensitive repairs, truck collisions. So DOT regularly inspects the structural condition of the bridges and then does repairs accordingly. Our role, the Conservancy's role, is to guide the aesthetic work in rehabilitating the bridges. Here I show you the Clinton Avenue Bridge in Westport before restoration. The steel work had to be refurbished, the mortar was examined, and the lost design on the pylons was redone in the original colors. Here I showed you before, and here is the result afterwards. The Lake Avenue Bridge is probably one of the most spectacular restorations of the Conservancy. It is one of the most eclectic in design. Oops, sorry, I'm speeding up. So here's what it looked like before restoration. So we partnered with DOT on this project, but brought in Jablonski Building Conservation to really analyze this. It was very structurally unsound. The steel framework had to be replaced. The cast iron railings and decorations had to be taken down. In the 1970s, the bridge was painted green, and then during 1989, it was painted blue. Just a nightmare. But anyway, they studied this, restored the malleable cast iron grills, these beautiful grapevines and scrolls, and did just an incredible job on this. And for this, the Conservancy received an award from the National Scenic Byway Foundation. Here's the final result. As I mentioned, Comstock Hill Road in Norwalk, again, another collaboration where the Conservancy brought in Jablonski Building Conservation. So first DOT saw that they had to repair this bridge because a water main carried by the bridge had leaked, causing structural damage to the span. The repairs involved water jet cleaning. This kind of removed some of the outer paint, but revealed permanent graffiti ghosts, and also there had been brown paint over that had been applied onto the concrete. So we got involved with this conservation team to really do a proper water cleaning, sort of a sponge blasting on this project. And took a while. Here you show them working on this project. The bridge was ultimately cleaned and then treated with a mineral-based Kime coating tinted to match the original concrete. This is another example of it. There you see the colonist, and there's that one again. This is the Newtown Turnpike Bridge Road in Westport, stripped, replaced with new stone. The South Avenue in New Canaan, the central cartouche was replaced. So right now, we're excited, and this is great news for New Canaan, because DOT has just announced that due to structural damage, 2 bridges in New Canaan are the next to be repaired. This is the Marvin Ridge Road Bridge, and then also the Lapham Road Bridge will be restored. And again, we're working with them because especially this has just beautiful details, architectural details, and these wonderful classical urns and the pylon are just wonderful and need to be analyzed. So we'll probably be bringing these conservators in again to work with us. So in terms of other upcoming ongoing projects, we're in the 26th iteration of the Route 7 interchange due to many stakeholders. I'm not going to get into it, no time, but it's going on, it's going to happen, it'll get done. Wrong way signalizations is a big issue throughout, the Department of Transportation is implementing this everywhere, and so we go on site with DOT and a group of advisors, and we examine where the placement of them, because we really want it's very important to us to protect the view shed and make sure that no signage is visible from the parkway. So we are also finally putting together a long-term landscape management plan. So as with our homes, we know it's one thing to upgrade a site, but the work is ongoing. And this plan will hopefully balance the original concept, the design of Chase, while adding plantings to screen the increased development along the parkway. And this is actually the New Canaan, this is an example of screening we did for the New Canaan salt shed. And here, screening and landscaping done by the Westport Y. So here's some examples of these plantings. So in our role, I guess viewshed protection is part of our original mission, and we really work hard to preserve the green space and the beautiful views that make traveling along this parkway such an enjoyable experience. Fairfield actually has a zoning ordinance that states that no commercial signs shall be erected that faces or is visible from the parkway. So in our role as the Parkway Sentinel, we take advocacy and legal action against threats from large-scale developments that impact the Merritt special character. We recognize and support the need for economic development in towns along the Merritt, and we do our best to work with these communities, but it isn't always easy, and we've actually been dealing with some problems in Fairfield, and this is an example of a very large, highly visible project that is planned but hasn't been approved yet. We're appealing it on Black Rock Turnpike. So we attend hearings with legal counsel. We hire experts to provide independent environmental, traffic, and historic resource studies and reports to demonstrate adverse effects on health and the environment, such as water sources and wetlands, and safety due to increased congestion. So how many of you recognize this bridge? Anybody know what it is? White Oak Shade Road, right? So right now, we have an exciting, on a positive note, moving away from all these tricky problems and challenges that we face. We are working on an exciting project. We hope it will be realized. We're working with DOT and the town of New Canaan on a plan to light the White Oak Shade Road Bridge that subtly highlights the beautiful architectural and sculptural features of this restored Art Deco bridge. By activating this space with lighting, we hope this prototype will inspire support to light more bridges and call attention to their preservation, and also be a safety measure at night and prevent some collisions. We did this years ago, just briefly, as it was done years ago as a holiday lighting. This is the Ponus Ridge Road Bridge, but this was temporary and this would be permanent. So finally, in closing, so more to come on that. You'll definitely be hearing about it as we continue to develop this project, which is a bit complex and involved, and involves a lot of players. In closing, I'd like to mention that this year we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Conservancy under the leadership of our chair, Peter Malkin. And we're planning a gala in October. I hope some of you will participate. We are also planning, if you'd like to come back and really hear more about the behind-the-scenes work that goes into preserving the Merritt, we're having a panel here with 5 experts all in the fields of architecture, landscape, some of whom are here. Actually, I think almost all of you are here tonight. So it's going to be wonderful on May 13th. And we will have a representative from a lead engineer from DOT here as well, speaking about his involvement on many, many projects with us. It has really been a wonderful work experience, collaboration recently. So basically, I just ask you to visit our website, look out for, join it, add your email to it, look out for updates on projects that we're working on, events that we're doing. I just hope that by telling this story, I engage you about this national treasure and Connecticut's unique historic landmark. And so I also encourage you to support us. We can't safeguard this irreplaceable cultural resource without your help. And in closing, I just would like to quote Herb Newman, the award-winning architect, Yale professor of architecture, and former board member of the Conservancy. To my mind, it's Connecticut's longest, perhaps most wonderful work of architecture. The joy of that experience, compared to other motoring experiences, has always stood out. That's what great works of art do. They renew you and get you in touch with your humanity. The Merritt does that. It's a great work of art. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Arianne. Really fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we're going to take some questions from the audience, and if you raise your hand, we will come to you with the mic so that we capture this for the recording.
How was it originally financed, if historically that was a time period of depression and such?
A lot of it bonds. Actually, the WPA, the WPA, that was a tiny, actually, believe it or not, was a really tiny percentage of funding. It didn't actually, was funded by that, but I believe a lot of bonds. Yeah, I can't remember. Wes, do you remember what else? Was it mainly sort of federal, state bonds? What else? Where else did the funding come? But mainly state, right? It was mainly the state, right? Sorry. It was mainly the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, the bonds were to be paid back by tolls, which they were put in after the parkway was completed.
I forgot to mention
Forgot about the tolls.
I forgot about the tolls. There's so much. We have an image on the map in the gallery of one of the original tolls.
You showed the Comstock Hill Bridge, which had a pedestrian walkway, which was never used because it was always overgrown with vines. It's been restored, but now it's fenced off. So can you comment on that aspect?
On the pedestrian walkway? Actually, I don't know. Wes, can you answer that one? Thank God I've got Wes here. I don't know about that. Or, oh, we've got our Norwalk expert.
Transports water over Comstock Hill, over the parkway. So it's didn't revert to utility.
Luckily, I've got a whole team here.
I want you to know how much I love the bridges on Merritt. The lights that are going to go on that bridge, is that something that's absolutely going to happen? Does the town have any?
Yep. No, we've been speaking to the town of New Canaan about it. It has to be a collaboration with the town. It's not, we're just in an early planning phase. So it's right now, we're not sure yet when, how, it's a little bit involved. You know, we're taking a lot into consideration. One thing for sure, there'll be no glare, no distraction to drivers. They're pretty sturdy. They really just only light the architectural features, so very subtle lighting. They're being designed by a German designer who they specialize in architectural lighting design, probably the top in the field. So very sensitive to a lot and really working carefully with DOT and just maintenance around the bridges and snow throw and everything. So we're looking into it carefully. So it's going to be a little while still.
So I grew up around here since the 70s, and lore has it that there was some competition among architect students at Yale to design the bridges. Is there any is there any truth to that? Was there any relationship between the designing of the bridges and
And a competition
Yeah.
at Yale in the 1930s?
yeah?
Nope, never,
Yeah.
not aware
So
of that.
That's an old
No, this
wives'
was
tale
pretty
then.
much a Department of Transportation, highway project. These were all employees. Dunkelberger and Chase were employees of the highway department, so it was an inside job.
We've got one over here.
But they were lucky to have such talents. It was difficult to get jobs at that time for architects and landscape designers, but we were lucky we had them.
Hi. How much private land was required in order to purchase the land, in order to have the stretch of this parkway developed?
Quite a bit, and that's a little bit of an interesting story because there was definitely a scandal involved with land acquisition, and basically someone had said I could go into it, but it was they were a real estate agent together with McDonald at the time. The commissioner had to actually resign over this land acquisition because there were definitely people profiting from the sale and then resale of land. So it wasn't all eminent domain acquisition, but that was discovered and put a halt to. But it's quite a bit. I mean, so this is a almost 38-mile stretch, and so that was definitely a chunk of properties that were affected. But I don't know, Wes, do you have anything? Do you want to add to that? How much do we have? Like a number or?
No.
I don't know the number, but that's a great question.
Thank you. And it's larger on the south side of the shoulder. So it's a very regular parcel that goes for the 37.5 miles.
We have another question back here.
I live right next to the Merritt, have for a few years. And we've all seen transitions that the Conservancy has gotten involved in and other things they didn't. I find it interesting. I live on Marvin Ridge, and we have now our bridge and other bridges have chain link fence on it. Looks terrible. I have no idea why that was let go. It doesn't do anything. That they're so worried about somebody throwing stuff on cars, it doesn't do that because the fence isn't long enough. Two other things like, you talk about lack of signage. You won't see signage from other things off the road. Well, the hi-ho's been there forever. Everybody passes that.
Yep.
It looks terrible.
Yeah, that's before the Conservancy.
Before the Conservancy.
Before,
I
a
understand
lot
that.
of this stuff was put in before the Conservancy.
And that's fair. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what we're
Unfortunately.
getting into now. Through our town, we had clear cuts, basically both sides of the Merritt. That if you look at the original pictures of the Merritt and the plantings and the landscaping done, it wasn't meant to be clear cut 20 yards on both sides, but that's what we've ended up with now. And they planted things that are not going to last because they don't get the moisture in this day and age than they did when they was growing up. So does the Conservancy get involved in this nitty-gritty like this, or like commercial vehicles that abound on the Merritt now? There's no such thing as no commercial vehicles.
Yep, no, absolutely. I know the commercial, no, that's why we're working together with them on this first landscape management plan. We have a wonderful advisory committee working with DOT on this. Peter Vitoretto here, our tree whisperer, is here. He's the man to talk to about plantings. And I totally agree with everything you've said. And so we're trying to, as I said, obviously there's been more development since the 30s, so we're trying to work with all this and still keep it. So we're really looking into how do we plant this? How do we make this, beautiful again, texturally? Respect Chase's design, but at the same time, I mean, a lot has changed, so it's a fine balance, but we are thoughtfully working with it. DOT has brought in consultants who specialize in it to really work, so it's really a thoughtful process that we'll be working on, and we'll have more to report on. We're hoping to get like a preliminary design and plan this summer, and hopefully by next fall, we're working on it, but they're working closely with us on landscape. In terms of traffic and trucks, we'd like to be more proactive about increasing traffic surveillance. There are only 2 troopers on the entire Merritt right now. It's insane. Traffic violation fines from trucks used to be $90. State Representative Matt Blumenthal got it up to $500, but I'm getting reports that it's not even enforced quite often when this happens. So obviously this is a problem. That doesn't cover a bridge repair. We also would like to improve GPS navigation software on sites like Google, Apple, Waze, all that. And I think it was around 2021, Senator Blumenthal proposed this GPS upgrade. Unfortunately, nothing has been done, but we're still trying to stay on top of it because our commercial, if you have a very high-level commercial GPS, some trucks have this that they acquire, that the companies acquire. Those tend to actually notify you of any height restrictions of bridges. Problem is, the public ones, the ones that are free, they don't do that, are the ones that we use. I know mine doesn't do that. So this is a problem because a lot of trucks or commercial trucks are also often just rented, outsourced, whatever. So it's a huge problem, and it's difficult. But we would like to be more proactive, and we encourage everybody to, if you spot it, contact state representatives, keep at them to add more troopers, to increase surveillance. Every little bit counts to notify and report what you see.
Thank you for coming. Living in New Canaan and appreciating the Parkway, I was very saddened some years ago when a truck came along and knocked off a big chunk of the Lapham Road Bridge, which has been broken for years now.
Yep.
You mentioned trucks. At that time when it happened, I was living here, and I wondered why the state didn't go after the trucking company and have them do the repairs. Now we're stuck with it.
Yep.
Aren't there records and things you could find to
Fortunately,
get them to pay for this?
Not always. They apparently don't always keep records of this, track this. This is a problem. It's a real problem. And we get constantly complaints about it. People are viewing things, seeing actually this happen, and these truckers not even getting fined or anything. And it's a problem. So, but I think the more people can write in, and on our website, we have an advocacy page where we also, give you guidelines on how to actually write. And I think the more we talk about it and complain about it, maybe something will get done. It's a problem, and it's frustrating because we end up paying. As you said, we're paying for the Lapham Bridge. This bridge has been so abused, but we're going to do a great job restoring it, and we're going to take into consideration the areas where it has been hit. So maybe we can make some adjustments, either lower the road or make some adjustments to the span. So that's something we're taking. Is there something we can do to diminish these collisions? I know, just keep the trucks off, right.
We have one back here.
Thank you very much. My question has to do, I think, primarily with the Merritt 7 project. And I'm sure you know that not everybody looks at the Department of Transportation as the most environmentally sensitive agency. And one topic that you haven't talked about is stormwater runoff and roadway pollutants from the road surface into water bodies. Now, not too long ago, the DOT amended its I-95 bridge plans over the Norwalk River to capture runoff from 80% of the bridge deck going into the river. And we thought that was going to set a precedent for other DOT projects. And actually, we talked with Senator Murphy's staff about conditioning highway funds on the inclusion of stormwater management and environmental measures. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the DOT's plans for the Merritt 7 project, that they talk about the goals of public safety and improving pedestrian safety.
Yes.
But I didn't see anything about stormwater management or environmental initiatives. And when you look at the sketches of the proposed work, which includes work over the Norwalk River, adjacent to it and nearby, it looks like there's a tremendous additional amount of impervious surfaces added. But there's no discussion of stormwater management. And of course, that water goes directly into the river, it creates a problem. So I'm sorry to go on for so long, but is the Conservancy interested in those sorts of issues? And do you have an ability to influence the DOT to, just like someone's building a house, they have to capture the runoff?
We've got a response right here.
Right, so the
We've got the
advisory committee
expert.
has actually looked at the 30% design drawings for the interchange. And in those drawings, they're just starting to look at the vegetative cover. That cover includes what they call sort of rain basins or water collection basins. That's actually a counter issue to the character of the parkway. So we have to be very careful about the way we actually treat stormwater runoff in a national landmark landscape or national register landscape, where we have to balance what is aesthetically pleasant and part of the parkway historic character with what we consider as rain guards, which are not. So yes, but the answer is we are looking at working with DOT and addressing stormwater runoff.
Thank you. We had another one right here.
I'll share with you 3 trivial but interesting facts about the Merritt. Number 1, when it was built, the Highway Department and the Bridge Department were very competitive. Hatfields and McCoys. When you drive down the Merritt, you'll notice that the road squeezes underneath every bridge because they designed the roadway to be wide and the bridge builders made the bridges too narrow. Number 2, trucks were allowed on the Merritt during the Second World War. As you know, Bridgeport, Waterbury helped win that war, and they opened the Merritt to trucks to transport material. It ripped up the roadway in a terrible way, and it got its first decent repaving after the Second World War. And then finally, when you come in Greenwich, you take that big loop north, and then you come back down south. Why is that? Because certain people had horse farms in Greenwich and had good connections, and they were able to shift the roadway and not to interfere with their polo ponies.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's Nate Gibbons, by the way, who has photographs of the show. He has been documenting the Merritt Parkway for, I don't know, forever, and has an archive, a treasure trove of all the bridges, everything. So he's truly passionate about this. So just so you know who's giving you these tidbits. But yeah, you know, when you talk about, it's interesting because the Dunkelberger drawing in the exhibition is actually a bridge that was designed as to connect a bridle path in Greenwich. So all the bridges were more or less completed, and then, you know, these residents were upset that their bridle path had been, you know, kind of just disrupted. They couldn't get from one side to the other, and so he did this drawing for a bridge, but it was never actually constructed. But so it's a kind of like fun little artifact in the show.
Arianne, before we go to our last question, I just want to say I love working with you. Nobody does it like you do. Your research is impeccable. You're tireless. Really, I mean, we're in good hands.
Well, I still, as you see,
we're in really good hands, people.
I've only been doing this for a year. I'm really playing catch up. You know, there are people in this room who I am learning so much from. Peter, Wes, David. I mean, I have to say, and I haven't mentioned this, the Conservancy is really incredible because of the unbelievable team on this board. I mean, these are top-notch experts in their fields, and they give their time. They're passionate about this. They work behind the scenes. Their knowledge is unbelievable. So that's why I really encourage you to come to learn. You'll learn so much more from them than on May 13th. And I'm grateful to this whole team and all the people who work on the Merritt, because I'm learning every day, and I'm become more and more excited about it every day. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to this wonderful
So last one, but the library doesn't close until 8, so you're invited to please enjoy the exhibition and chat with Arianne and the others in the room. And thank you so much to all of you for caring about the Merritt and for coming tonight. Last question.
It's really sort of a two-part question. You know, the Pasadena Freeway was built at about the same time, and I'm from California, and it's an historic. It was really the first freeway, and it's much like the Merritt. And then you've
Really
also
windy.
right. Well, yeah, and in
Super
fact,
windy. I'd get scared on it.
It was built to be windy because people believed you couldn't go faster than 25 miles an hour, or you'd get
Right.
sort of a kind of a whiplash. But,
Right.
So they made it. You wouldn't get bored. So. So that between that and maybe the Taconic and maybe some others, these are all highways before the interstate highway system. What I'm wondering is if you've built literally bridges with some of these other groups who are interested in conserving these really beautiful parts of our transit and transportation network. And one way of doing that is you had pictures of the casts for Ferrari and the artwork that's on some of the bridges. I wonder if you still have access to those molds, and you can actually license and sell that as art if you recast new pieces of that. Because if you look at a national market, there would be a huge market for these beautiful works of art. And as a fundraiser and as a way of bringing people together in the interest of preserving these properties.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any molds that have survived. I'm not aware of any. I don't think they survive. And sometimes the whole process, they weren't in such great shape after. Often molds, it's rare to still, I think people just discarded them. People didn't see the value, and it would be amazing. It's rare. I'd say with sculptures, actual individual, independent, freestanding sculptures, that exists. Those survive. But I think on this project, that wasn't they didn't see that. No, haven't been, but that's a nice, I know it well. I traveled it for many years when I lived there.
Well, thank you, Merritt Parkway Conservancy. We're so proud to have you in our library, and thanks to all of you for coming to learn about this really, really important topic. Good night.